Amplifying the Marginalized Women's Voices from South Asia, which has been organized in collaboration with Dignity Initiative and The Awakening. I am Shatakshi Verma, and I work with Reporters Without Borders, and I will be your moderator for the whole session today. Let me introduce to you the event and why we're here today. The 69th session of the Commission on Status of Women is taking place until 21st March at the United Nations headquarters in New York at the moment. The Commission on the Status of Women, CSW, is the principal global intergovernmental body exclusively dedicated to the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women. A functional commission of the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, it was established by the Council Resolution 11 on 21st June of 1946. The CSW is instrumental in promoting rights, women's rights specifically, documenting the reality of women's lives throughout the world, and shaping global standards on gender equality and the empowerment of women. This year is also quite special as it marks the 30th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on Women and the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Today, our event and the learnings that you will hear would be focused on the context of South Asia. When it comes to access to justice and women's rights in South Asia, women experience intersectional marginalization, where gender-based discrimination intersects with other factors as well, like caste, religion, and socioeconomic status, which creates unique and complex challenges. Today, we will join experts from Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan in discussing the different contexts in which gender-based discrimination manifests itself in their countries, and also how these marginalizations intersect across the region. On that note, I would actually like to invite and open with our today's opening speaker and invite Ms. Aditi Patel to speak and give the opening remarks. I would introduce her briefly so that you all also know about her amazing work. Aditi is a lawyer by training and works as a human rights consultant, focusing on advocacy strategies and UN engagement. She has completed her master's degree in law from the University of Cambridge. She has worked as a trainee at the UN office at the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva, especially with the Complaints Procedure Mechanism and the UN Human Rights Council Bureau. Presently, she works as an independent consultant and uses her experience to advise organizations and assist them in strengthening their engagement and strategizing and developing evidence-based advocacy. Aditi, would you like to unmute and share your remarks?
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Thank you, Satakshi, for the very kind introduction. It is a great honor to be speaking with all of you today, but also a big responsibility to really set the context of the conversation for this evening. As Satakshi mentioned, we stand at a very critical juncture with decades in the making towards collective efforts by various stakeholders towards gender equality and empowerment. Steps towards prioritizing and mainstreaming all of these issues have taken various forms, including in our region, which includes constitutional reforms and guarantees, national laws complementing CEDAW, policies that are aimed at achieving the targets outlined under SDG 5 and Beijing Plus 30, as Shatakshi mentioned. However, this is also a moment that truly calls for reflection and contextualization of all of these efforts, particularly for our region, to take stock of the progress made in South Asia over the decades, but also to critically examine whether all these efforts have been truly effective as much as we would have liked them to, or are they truly representative and inclusive in their mandate of making a difference to the lives of all women and girls. And the emphasis on all here is very important because even today, there are millions of women, especially from communities who have been historically marginalized and systemically excluded, who face discrimination, who continue to face several barriers from truly fully realizing their rights and potential. What is also equally important for us to address is the weight of intersecting inequalities that all of these women face based on various social identity markers, as Shatakshi mentioned. Now, this could be based on caste, indigeneity, ethnicity, religion, disability, sexual orientation, socioeconomic strata, geographical regions, political conditions, and so on and so forth. These are really kaleidoscopic factors that add complex layers after layers of disadvantage, discrimination, and violations that are experienced by these marginalized women and essentially have a compounded effect. However, we often see that despite best efforts, these lived realities are more often than not lost in the general or high level conversations around gender equality and empowerment. What we also need to address is that the factors contributing to these exclusions are also a complex nexus of socio-cultural impediments, institutional and structural challenges, power imbalances, and access-related barriers that are sometimes very peculiar to our region, but they often feed into each other to really muffle and exclude the voices of those who are already marginalized. Now, I'll address them one by one, particularly in our region. The deeply ingrained socio-cultural practices and traditional norms, be it rigid gender roles or patriarchal structures, are a big determining factor which truly prevent meaningful empowerment and inclusion of women. But what we need to understand is the real disproportionate impact that these practices have on women who are already marginalized. For example, they limit the already limited social mobility of these women. They prevent them from accessing quality education, healthcare, or even equal resources such as land and capital. They affect their economic and personal autonomy, their participation in workforce and public life. Uh, a lot of our experts here already work on the field would know how marginalized women who are marginalized by reasons of any of these identity markers are at such a great risk of also harmful social practices. You can talk about caste based discrimination and violence, honor killings, early forced and child marriages, sexual and gender based violence, menstrual discrimination, to just name a few. Absence of real social support systems and capital also further isolates and exacerbates their vulnerabilities. Now, these socio-cultural barriers are also tied into our institutional and structural challenges very uniquely, particularly for South Asia. And before we really touch upon those challenges, it would be important to acknowledge also the progress that has been made by countries in our region. Most countries have constitutionally enshrined the guarantee of equality and non discrimination for women. There are legislations protecting and guaranteeing rights of women, including marginalized women. You can look at domestic or gender based violence, or legislations prohibiting and preventing sexual harassment, maternity benefits, prohibiting harmful customs. States have also gradually started devising development policies that uh, are inclusive and empower women in all spheres of life. Now, this could take form of either reserved quotas in local governance, national parliaments, inclusive and incentivized educational policies. So the progress has been there, but it still begets the question, how effective have all these efforts been, and have they really benefited all women equally? Have they really addressed the multiple marginalizations that most of these women face, as we spoke about? In South Asia, particularly, we find that effective implementation of policies and laws has posed a much bigger challenge than the mere existence of institutional frameworks, because they are there. They're just not as effective as we would like them to be. And our experts on the panel will really unravel this more. But these structures often end up invisibilizing women from marginalized identities, their struggles and specific needs, either due to social stigma and biases, limited access to justice, as Chatakshi mentioned, lack of police sensitivity and impunity, and real absence of supportive protection mechanisms. There's also this disparity in access to resources, welfare programs, and opportunities that further end up excluding and exploiting women who already, unfortunately, even today continue to remain at the fringes of the society. If we look at all of this, this has really led to a very architectured underrepresentation or even absolute exclusion of marginalized women from political participation or decision making spaces, even to engage on issues that directly affect their lives and that of their communities. Even in countries like India, where there are horizontal quotas for women, the real question is how meaningful are they in their vertical expanse, and whether the most marginalized women on various factors truly benefit from them. This really makes governance structures either inaccessible or inadequate to make their needs. And this is equally true of international spaces and platforms. Today, we see some incredible women from marginalized communities who have reclaimed their rightful space over the years and are becoming a strong voice from their communities, but it is nearly not enough. Now, amplifying meaningful participation and voices of marginalized women is really crucial to challenge the power dynamics that have historically excluded them. We need to acknowledge that they have their own voice. They can speak for themselves, shape their own narratives, and assert their agency over decisions shaping their lives. Now, an intentional hearing of these voices would just mean that development agendas that exist, their efficacy and their reach is truly relevant to the society as a whole, but especially to those who are most vulnerable. It is these community led solutions and grassroots empowerment rather than top down interventions that we see that can bring sustainable and contextually relevant change. Their voices also bring an element of honesty and authenticity to the issues that are being addressed, otherwise, which remain very superficial, unfortunately. It can inspire and inform women's rights movement globally, rebuild the solidarity and also the shared vision of rather intangible ideals of equality, discrimination, empowerment, and justice. And I must mention this, marginalized women need no saviors. What they do deserve is their rightful space and allies who don't occupy their space. It is about acknowledging their experiences, learning from their lead, and taking proactive measures to dismantle structures that hamper their rights, dignity, and empowerment. And it is imperative for any meaningful change or progress in the region, and so that truly no woman is left behind. Now, we have an excellent panel of experts who will share their knowledge and insights, but truly to address these issues, we need to address the socio-cultural and structural challenges head on. It also demands a multifaceted, a multi stakeholder approach where international bodies, governments, community leaders, donor agencies, civil society make concerted efforts. There also needs to be a localization of national and international frameworks with regular consultations from leaders working on the grassroots so that to ensure that they're suitable to and not removed from social contexts. We must, however, also acknowledge that a lot of the changes that we are speaking about would require an immense amount of political will and commitment, an allocation of really suitable, adequate resources. We have seen how funding cuts over the last few months have left much of a skewed impact on especially those working on the rights of marginalized people, especially women. And this has further limited entry points for any meaningful engagement. Now, what we truly need to work on is to expand these spaces and bridge these gaps between high level policies and the lived experiences of marginalized women, particularly from South Asia. It is truly the time to acknowledge and break those multiple layers of glass ceilings, not just one, especially in times like today when the popular rhetoric is really not conducive to this work. I would just conclude by a wonderful quote by Shirley Chisholm, which says that if there is no space at the table, bring your own chair. And that is what so many women from marginalized communities and all of us are really attempting at doing. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all our experts today to understand the challenges in their unique contexts, listening to stories of resilience and how they imagine we could all collectively work together to bring about sustainable solutions to amplify and empower the voices of marginalized women in South Asia. Thank you once again for this honor and for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aditi. I think that opened up a huge possibilities of discussion that we can have, and very well comprehensively shared all of the problems that we are facing, which are bigger than it is that we see right now. But it's also important that even though, as you said, we have seen progress, there are so many foundational structural issues that need to be worked on a very sustainable perspective. And I think that would be a great thing to hear from our panelists going forward as well, who are working a lot on the ground as well. Thank you very much, Aditi. I will now also bring out our panelists. There will be 4 panelists today. who'll be speaking. I will introduce them one by one to all of you, and then we will have a series of questions that will bring different perspectives from Pakistan, Nepal, India, and Bangladesh. That would also help us to understand how cross regional efforts can be made towards gender equality in the region as well. Our first panelist is Jyoti Tahane. She's a seasoned expert with 20 plus years of experience combating sex trafficking and gender-based violence in India. Holding a master's degree in social work and a PGDM in development management, she has dedicated her career to creating a safer, more equitable world for women and children. As a senior program director at Vipla Foundation, a leading Indian NGO, she spearheads initiatives to prevent violence, protect survivors, enhance access to justice, and collaborate with systemic actors, driving meaningful change and fostering justice. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Jyoti, today. I would introduce our second panelist next, who's from Bangladesh, Fareen Masfikwa Malik. She's a passionate advocate for the protection and empowerment of women and girls. With extensive experience in gender based violence and prevention, community based protection, and humanitarian response, she has worked with UN agencies, national and international NGOs, and her expertise spans GBV coordination, emergency response, and policy advocacy, ensuring women's safety and inclusion in crisis settings. Our third panelist, who's all the way here with us from Pakistan, Mr. Irfan Hussain Babak, is a human rights defender from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan, where he's working to protect the rights of marginalized communities, particularly women and survivors of violence. His journey in activism began when he witnessed firsthand the impact of systemic injustices in his own family and community. Through the awakening, he has led initiatives on legal empowerment, gender justice, and community based advocacy, striving to create a world where justice is accessible to all. Welcome, Mr. Irfan. Our fourth and the final panelist for today is Mr. Roop Sunar, who's a researcher and writer and activist from Nepal. He leads the Dignity Initiative, which is a Kathmandu based research and advocacy organization working for Dalits and marginalized groups. He has been working to strengthening the Dalit rights movement in Nepal for over a decade. His work focuses on supporting these rights through research, policy dialogue, data driven advocacy, and nurturing the next generation of leaders from the Dalit community. Welcome, all of you, and thank you for joining for such an important conversation today and giving your time for this. I would like to start my questions, and I think I would first go with to Jyoti. Is Jyoti ma'am here in the room? I think she's joining. Hi, Jyoti. Can you hear me? I think you're on mute.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, you're completely audible and well, like we can hear you well. So I will put my first question towards you if that works. So I wanted to see, because I think the first round would be more about setting the context, because we're talking about four different countries here and with different sometimes realities. So India has strong legal frameworks that address violence against women, which includes laws against sexual violence and trafficking. Yet the issue remains widespread. What are the key factors that you think are contributing to this persistence of gender-based violence in India?
Yeah. Shatakshi and Aditi, I think you made a point, about the deep-rooted societal norms that, perpetuate gender inequality, patriarchy that really normalizes the violence against women. I recently met, an old lady who believed for 70 years of her life that she has an extra rib to be able to take, a violence from men that she is married to. And we also need to understand that the enforcers of law enforcement, or people from the system, they also come from the same society. They also believe in same patriarchal values, and they also follow the deep-rooted societal norms. So suddenly expecting a person who has this biases or prejudices or invisible benefits to them, and expecting in their role, in professional role, act differently, it is something that has not really worked. Another thing is that I also look at it, the issue as a demand and supply issue. One is in India, if I have to talk about in Indian context, the laws, as you rightly mentioned, we have a very robust legal framework and we have a very good laws. However, it has not been able to create a deterrence to the crime against women, because uh, the implementation of the law is still inconsistent. It leads, it is still has a very very low conviction rates, and it has not worked as a deterrent, so it still remains a low risk, low risk illegal activity. In India we have just 153 police for 1 lakh population. We have about 5600 vacant positions of judges, uh, from lower courts to Supreme Courts, and we have about 52 million cases pending in the court. And in this scenario, there is the machinery that is created to supply justice, that is already overburdened and it is already very weak. So the laws being strong is not really helping. On the demand side, I would say that there's a lack of awareness and education, and there is a low justice seeking behavior among the population. In other words, there is a very high tolerance to injustice, especially in marginalized and excluded communities. What if you and me take, a small thing as injustice, for them they will not even consider injustice. So that is something we feel that is lacking. Laws that we have are, all laws are open to interpretation. Even laws that are carefully written can be interpreted in one or more ways. But if the machinery that is implementing it is not able to do that, if they come from a bias, they will interpret law in a way that it doesn't support victims and not making a dent on the gender based violence. And that is, apart from what you both said, I think the laws being very good, it is still not helping to reduce the violence against women.
Thank you, Jyoti. I think Ms. Jyoti is pointing a very important issue, that the foundation of these machineries itself is quite deep rooted in this patriarchal norms, which is bringing even the laws that come out of it being biased. Thank you so much. I would come back to you for the next round of questions, but I would like to go to the next panelist, Fareen from Bangladesh. Hi, Fareen. Thank you for joining us today. I would like to understand the context now, how it is in Bangladesh. Like, for example, child sexual violence, particularly rape cases, have been decreasing in Bangladesh, is what we've seen. What are the main reasons behind this? Has been increasing in Bangladesh. What are the main reasons behind this alarming trend, and how severe is this situation today?
Thank you, Satakshi, for asking this question, and welcome to everyone in this panel discussion. Please let me know if I'm audible clearly. Yeah?
Yes, can
Okay.
hear you. Yes.
So this is a very interesting question. If we talk about current Bangladesh, and if we have a little bit knowledge about our past history, last year in August, we did have a very uprising protest in our country that made our previous government fall. And after that, the situation of the country is not quite stable in terms of, if we talk about the for law agencies enforcement situation. People did have lost a total trust on police, but they are trying to come back. But yet there is a lots of things that needs to be done. And if we talk about child abuse and child violence or child rape cases, well, interestingly, previously we were not that much aware about this kind of violences that's happening with a child. But now in media, it's being highlighted most. If I talk about the recent incident that happened last week, an 8-year-old girl passed away after being raped and was being attempted to be killed. So it actually is now a burning issue in Bangladesh right now. And if I talk about 2025, in the first 2 months, there has been more than 52 rape cases being reported. And the most scary part is that after the rape incident is taking place, the perpetrators are now more into very aggressive. They are into taking the lives of the children as well, which was not so common previously. So if we look at the past history, we may think that, okay, maybe previously there was not such an alarming situation or something like that. But if we look at the report, it was happening for the last 10 years also. And for the last 10 years, if you look at the report, it's more than 5,600 child were being reported as murdered, abused, raped, and violence. So previously it was not highlighted. Maybe one of the reason is that media and the corruption in the law enforcement agencies, but nowadays it's being more visible because people are more vocal now. And the social medias are acting very promptly. So this is kindly a very, I can say, a red point for Bangladesh to look into it. And if we look about the trend, why it's happening in this way. So three main things that I can actually identify based on my observation. The first thing is that poverty. So since last year, there is a huge number of people losing their jobs. So according to the report, it's more than zero point 0.6 million unemployment rate is there. And also it's increasing day by day. And as we know that after there are lots of fund being taken away, it's happening every day. So this is one reason. The second reason I can identify is that lack of awareness. Like when the incident is happening, the child's family or the child itself are not sure about how to report it, how to talk, how to share about, how to share it, and also if they are safe enough after sharing the incident that they faced, you know. So this is a second thing, and the last thing that I can say is the very low trust on the law enforcement agencies, and also the system, because the system does not recognize clearly the child abuse and violence in a very fundamental way. Whereas the international agencies are very active working on it, but within the system, I will say that there is a gap, a loophole that needs to be worked on. So,
Thank you so
yes.
much, Fareen. Yes, I think it's a very important picture that you paint on how crisis just took place and how it's also exacerbating the issue that has been there, but now it's maybe more visible, but it's still not being foundationally dealt with. That's very important, and thank you for sharing that with us. I think I'll bring our panelist from Pakistan, Mr. Irfan, on to speak. My question to you, Mr. Irfan, would be that in the context of Pakistan, there have been honor killings that have continued to take lives of hundreds of women each year. Despite legal reforms, why does this practice persist? And what are the main factors that you think are contributing to it?
Thank you, Shatakshi. Honor killings in Pakistan remain a deeply entrenched issue, claiming the lives of hundreds of women each year. Almost 1,000 women are killed in the name of honor in Pakistan each year. And in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province alone, 940 cases were reported during this period, with 103 incidences in 2022 and 127 cases in 2023. Uh, According to the primary data that we collected at the awakening, just in one district, 205 cases of honor killing were reported from 2018 to 2023, with an additional 15 cases of honor killings and 33 cases of murder of women recorded from January to December 2024. Despite legal reforms aimed at criminalizing the practice, the persistence of these crimes is driven by a combination of legal loopholes, social acceptance, weak law enforcement, and institutional failure. At the heart of this issue is the patriarchal belief that a woman's action, whether it be choosing a partner, seeking a divorce, or even engaging in behavior considered immodest, can tarnish a family's honor, and that restoring that honor necessitates her death. So one of the primary factor sustaining honor killings is the existing of legal loopholes within the justice system. I must say that in the past 15 years, I must say, like, Pakistan has become one of the most, like, overly legislative country. But unfortunately, as Aditi, you yourself, and Jyoti also shared, like, there is a serious lack of implementation of these legislation. So while like Pakistan has an Anti-Honor Killing Act 2016, which was designed to treat honor killings as intentional murder, but we have like the Qisas and Diyat laws still provide a pathway for perpetrators to escape justice. Under these provisions, a victim's family has the legal right to forgive the murderer, which in case of honor killing often means the killer's own family members grant a pardon, ensuring his acquittal. In many cases, survivors or the families of victims are pressured, intimidated, or even financially compensated into dropping charges, leading to a cycle of impunity. Law enforcement agencies also play a significant role in enabling honor killings to continue. Police officers frequently refuse to register the FIRs, the first information reports, particularly in rural areas where tribal councils or jirgas hold immense influence. These councils often intervene to mediate disputes outside the formal legal system, protecting perpetrators rather than ensuring justice for victims. Even when cases do proceed to court, weak forensic investigations, missing evidence, and judicial biases frequently lead to acquittal due to lack of evidence. Beyond legal and institutional challenges, honor killings are all socially and culturally justified in many communities. In deep patriarchal societies, a woman is often viewed as the carrier of her family's honor, and any perceived deviation from socially accepted norms, such as refusing a forced marriage or dressing in a way that is deemed inappropriate, can be seen as an act of defiance that must be punished. So, the normalization of honor killing means that perpetrators are often celebrated rather than condemned, reinforcing the practice rather than deterring it. Women who survive honor based violence are often left with no legal or social protection. There are few shelter available for survivors, and many of them face continued threats from their families, leaving them with no choice but to return to the same environment that nearly killed them. Societal ostracization further discourages women from seeking justice, as those who attempt to escape violence are labeled as dishonorable and often abandoned by their families.
Thank you so much, Mr. Irfan, on painting a picture, on understanding deep rooted these issues are, how this the law, because of these lack of enforcement of certain legal reforms, is also a huge issue when it comes to making these issues bigger. I'll go to Mr. Roop now to share with us his perspective on how caste and gender intersects in shaping the lived experiences of specifically Dalit women in Nepal, because that has been the biggest part of your work in the past decade.
Mhm. Thank you, Sataksi. Since I'm experiencing some unstable internet connectivity today, I'll keep my camera off. Uh, Thank you once again for your questions. As far as the caste and gender intersex is concerned in Nepal, Dalit women in Nepal, they face discrimination on multiple fronts, both because of their caste and as well as their gender. These two factors combine to create deep-rooted marginalizations. They are excluded not just for being Dalits, but also for being women. This makes them more vulnerable to domestic violence, sexual exploitation, as well as even trafficking. On top of that, within their own communities, they deal with patriarchal norms that keep them subordinate in the second position role, and many have the little access to education, even land ownership, and their literacy rates are far below than the national average. But their struggle aren't just about caste or just about gender. They are both together. They both work together. They face discrimination not only from upper caste communities, but also within the feminist and Dalit movements. Mainstream feminist spaces often focus on struggles of upper caste elite women's, while Dalit movements also tend to focus on male leadership and their struggle. So this leaves Dalit women caught in somewhere in middle, with their unique challenges often ignored. Their oppression cannot be kind of understood by just looking at their unique challenges often ignored. Their oppression cannot it's basically the combination of caste and gender that makes their situations further complex. So however, despite of all these odds, Dalit women are rising. They are stepping into politics. They are claiming their spaces. They are asserting their agencies to challenge these different layers of discrimination. I know this fight is very tough, but they are pushing it forward, particularly at the grassroots level. So, in a nutshell, what I can say is they are simply refusing to be invisible any longer. I stop here now.
Okay. That is very important, and thank you for ending on a one positive aspect of how women are also building their resilience and asserting their agency by challenging these layers of discrimination. And I'm sure it's happening in different layers, but it's also very and different spheres of their work, even within families. But it's also very important to acknowledge that they're doing that. Thank you, Mr. Roop. I think I would now move back to Ms. Jyoti. Um, Jyoti, you were sharing in the last section that there are a lot of patriarchal norms which could lead to certain police bias or victim blaming and stigma that could be attached with the ability of the women to report crimes of sexual violence and trafficking in India. What do you think would be what kind of reforms can there be or are necessary to make these law enforcement more survivor centric?
Um, here we all are aware that police is the first agency or the first response mechanism that we have when it comes to addressing violence against women. In cases of trafficking, we've seen that police is the agency that conduct raids, and we've seen that whether the survivor will participate in the justice delivery process or not, it lot depends how she is treated at the time of raid and at the police station. The half of the fate of the case is decided there, and that is where when we see the biased attitude of the police, if they brand them, if they label them, stigmatize them, the way they are treated at the police station, we know that the survivors participation is going to be minimal or nil, and they will be somebody who will be turned hostile. But their hostility comes from a lot of these factors. When it comes to the police reforms, we feel that there are a lot needs to be done at prevention level. Violence against women, it may be incidences that will happen in a certain age of a person life, in an individual life, but police is the last agency that you feel that you can approach. From the childhood, the conditioning is such that even if you are not eating food, the parents will tell you police will come and I'll take you to the police. So when you have a societal a practice of using police for a threat, you will not go to them for a help. And we feel that there is a lot of engagement of public and children and women that needs to happen uh, with police without a requirement, without a need to actually approach police. There is also the narrative that police is there for protecting people's right. The narrative currently is not that. The police, it's seen with a lot of power, with a lot of position, with a lot of arrogance, that the role that is why they are, it is not really the narrative that we see. Another point is the survivors, they need to have access several referral services, right, from medical to victim compensation to access court to access hospital, shelter homes, and most of the services are police is the point of contact. And that is where we have seen that police visiting the survivors visiting hospitals, police station, shelter home, it actually adds a lot to their trauma. And it is also something that really we see that survivors don't seek their help. There is also survivors are seen as a recipient of services and they are treated accordingly, whereas police, prosecutors, and survivors are actually one team in the justice delivery process. If the survivor testifies, if the police does investigation really well, and if prosecutor is able to present the case properly in the law, properly in the court, that is when justice will happen. But all these three agencies, survivor is never considered as an agency, but even the police and prosecutors, they don't work along. And that is again another barrier where we feel that the survivor needs to be made a party and not merely an recipient. Uh, of course, there is a need for training of law enforcement and judiciary, but the training need not be based on content, because we feel that when there are high profile cases, police know how to address or how to seek justice. I think there's a lot that needs to be done at a behavioral and attitude level. Police, when it's a case of a child, we see that they're not passing a judgment. And that is one of the content we use in our training. Police are not judges. We make them understand that your role is just to investigate, bring the facts, and present it to the court. You are not supposed to be passing a judgment that, she's a 23-year-old girl roaming around in the night alone, and so she's, she does not need justice, she called for it. It's a judgment that they pass and everything changes after that. So that is something, working on the behavior and attitude of law enforcement and related agencies is very, very critical.
Completely, and agree with you also, because I think the sensitization of all of these agencies and people who are in these spaces is the primary work towards making them more survivor centric when dealing with them. I think that would be a bit long way to go, but it's very happy to hear that there are training programs conducted by you through Vipla Foundation that are supporting that kind of work. I would like to go to Fareen next. Fareen, you were sharing how there is decreasing trust by the people in the law enforcement, and that is also creating one of the factors where the perpetrators of child rape and sexual violence in Bangladesh are not being uh, not being punished, or not being going not they do not go through the proper legal system. What would you say could be certain response that law enforcement agencies can make in the new system of government that Bangladesh has now? What do you see the next step as?
Um, you know, one very interesting thing is that if we look into the sexual violence law and everything, the legal framework does have some kind of restriction in terms of identifying the sexual offenses. And unfortunately, in this term, the child abuse or child violence are not addressed properly. So this is one big loophole in our legal framework. Another thing is that if we look into this, the marital rape is not being addressed properly also in the sexual gender-based violence legal processes, framework, whatever we name it, it's not properly addressed, it's ignored. So when we talk about people having trust into the legal system, legal process and everything, first of all, there is a lack of education, lack of awareness. First of all, the girls, they don't know from the very beginning that what are their rights as an individual, as in being a woman in the country, as a citizen of the country. Second thing is that the family that belongs into the society, they are also not that much aware about, like if something, this kind of incident take places, what they need to do, who is the first person to contact, because as Jyotiji was mentioning, that there was a very, everywhere there is the contact point of police, and decreasing trust on police is one of the issue people are not highlighting or not reporting it in a very appropriate way. So this is one kind of barrier to get the proper legal supports, societal supports, or even agency support for anyone. And another big issue is that the social norms, the social barriers, because if we look into the media nowadays, then the media is highlighting more on the victim rather than the perpetrator. One of the very good examples I can give you in the recent incident that happened, that 8-year-old girl who was being raped and murdered. So everyone know about that girl. Everyone knew that what happened with her, but the perpetrator, who were one of the family members of that person, is not that much highlighted. It's being only highlighted that it belongs from a family, extended family. He was being constantly raped and murdered by her brother-in-law and brother-in-law's father. So the sister over here, she was actually aware what was happening, but as there was a social barrier, as there was a lack of knowledge and awareness that what is the step that they need to take on, this incident took place and everyone know about it. So when we see the child abuse and child violence, most of the cases they are actually engaged with the family member or extended family members. So this is one of the very crucial point that needs to be highlighted. Whenever there is a risk of a child getting harmed by any of the family members, no one will be coming and telling you that I'm going to harm your child. But everyone has to have an awareness inside them and also make a child aware and also proper knowledge that what can be happen that is wrong and they need to be report or explain to their parents immediately. So this is one of the very important thing. Another important thing is that how the police, in terms of handling the cases, they actually lack of knowledge as well. The expertise of handling a child abuse cases, murder cases, or like rape cases, it needs a quite a number of training. It needs a quite number of sensitivity grows inside the people who are going to handle the kind of cases. So this is very crucial. Another thing is that the system itself is very corrupted. The system itself is very biased. So the perpetrator, why they are not being punished in a proper legal system, one of the big thing is that corruption and biasness. So they knows their way, they can find out their way, and police is also in a very, how can I say, friendly with them. Whoever gives them the most benefit, they are with them. So this is another reason the challenges still remain over there. The agencies like UNICEF, Save the Children, or BRAC, whoever is working on the ground with the people, they also sometimes face this kind of problems because most of the people who are coming from a very low social class background, they don't have the ability to deal with this kind of things. And they do have a fear themselves that if it's out, if it's people know about it, then what will be happening with the child's future? So there are, like, intersectional factors that is actually creating this area more difficult to address, to identify, and put the perpetrator in the legal system. Another important issue that I cannot ignore is that the delayed judicial system. Whenever it's going to the court, the system is so slow. At one point the perpetrator actually gets out from the system through bail. And that's one of the disappointing thing for the victim family as well, and the victim himself or herself as well, to go for the further processes. So there are multiple factors that are creating these challenges, for me, if I say it very deeply, then if we can establish a very prompt and a separate legal system to address this kind of violences, there can be a way where we can constantly keep working on it, make people aware, and also educate people more on this kind of incidents, reporting, handling, and also follow-up mechanisms as well.
Thank you very much, Fareen. I think what all of us are hearing from most of you are these commonalities that we see in legal loopholes across systems. And it goes back to what Aditi was mentioning, how structures are not implementing policies, are not doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And that's why it's time to start questioning these systems from the root, and talk about what we could do to reform them as well. Thank you, Fareen. And I think, Irfan, you were also sharing very similar context in Pakistan, where there are immense legal loopholes within the legal framework and the law system. And even though Pakistan did enact a law such as the Anti-Honor Killing Act, I think in 2016, to criminalize these acts, there are still weaknesses, as you mentioned, in these legal frameworks and loopholes that allow the perpetrators to escape justice. And so, do you think judiciary reforms can strengthen the implementation of laws that are protecting women, or what ways do you think we could push more for certain strengthening of these laws?
Yeah, the Anti-Honor Crime Act 2016 was a crucial step toward criminalizing honor killings, but its impact remains limited due to legal loopholes, weak enforcement, and the persistent application of diyat laws that allow perpetrators to evade justice. While the law technically mandates that honor killings be treated as murder, in reality, many cases still end in acquittal because of the forgiveness clause embedded in Pakistan's legal framework. One of the most significant weaknesses in the legal system is that honor killing remains compoundable in many cases, meaning the victim's family can forgive the perpetrator, which usually happens because the killer is a relative. He's like it may be your father, brother, or husband. Although the 2016 amendment was meant to prevent such pardons, like by introducing Section 311 into the PPC, the Pakistan Penal Code, but court still finds ways to exercise discretion and grant leniency, often using the argument that the crime was committed under grave and sudden provocations. As Jyoti shared, that survivors or police and the prosecution all work collectively, but unfortunately, it is not something which is in practice. Judges rarely apply mandatory sentencing provisions, and in many cases, the perpetrator walks free after a reduced sentence. Another critical flaw in the implementation of the law is the weak role of law enforcement agencies such as the police. Police officers frequently refuse to register honor crime cases, especially in tribal and rural areas where local jirgas or the tribal councils hold sway over community matters. These informal justice systems shield perpetrators from formal prosecutions, and police often side with the family to prevent a case from even reaching court. Forensic evidence collection is often inadequate or deliberately mishandled, leading to acquittal due to a lack of direct evidence. Judiciary reforms are essential in ensuring stronger implementation of laws protecting women. Courts must eliminate discretion in sentencing and ensure that honor killings are non compoundable crimes, meaning they cannot be forgiven under any circumstances. Judicial training programs should be implemented to sensitize judges, prosecutors, police on gender based violence cases so that honor killings are treated as serious offenses rather than family disputes. If strict sentencing guidelines were enforced, police officers were held accountable for obstructing justice, and forensic procedures were improved, the legal framework could be significantly strengthened. But as long as cultural acceptance and legal loopholes persist, the law will remain ineffective in delivering true justice for survivors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irfan, for sharing why we see these loopholes and what we can do to strengthen the legal system again. And I think I see this common thread again on how across India, Bangladesh, and especially and also Pakistan, we have similarities of who's not being sensitized enough, who are the first responders of cases like this. Um, Roop, I would like to come to you next because you did share a bit of the idea of this understanding of positive growth also on the fact that women are challenging positions and coming to spaces and being part of those spaces. But in your opinion, how effective are Nepal's constitutional and legal provisions in protecting Dalit women from caste and gender-based discrimination?
Thank you once again, Satakshi, for your questions. In terms of normative frameworks, we are better off. I mean, we have got normative frameworks available. But Dalit women continue to face serious legal and institutional barriers that actually impede their access to justice or say owning property or participation in decision making processes. The Constitution of Nepal 2015, particularly Article 24, 40, it actually ensures Dalits' right and provide rights against caste-based discrimination as a violence. But unfortunately, those laws, are rarely enforced. Enforcement is very weak. When Dalit women face violence or discrimination, their cases are, often ignored or delayed, or sometimes, dismissed by the law enforcement agencies as a non-issue. So we also have the Caste-Based Discrimination and Untouchability Act, which is still in existence. But when it comes to caste-based discrimination, particularly in relation to Dalit women, it's again rarely implemented, and perpetrators of who are especially from the privileged backgrounds, they often go unpunished. On top of that, Dalit women, they continue to struggle to claim their economic rights, let's say, property rights or land rights. As far as their political inclusion is concerned, at the local level election act, we have a provision that there should be a Dalit women representation, at least one Dalit women representation in each local level. As a result of which, we have a substantial numbers of Dalit women representing Dalits in the local governance. But if you look at their representation in the decision-making body, it is tokenistic, it is symbolic. In some instances, they are not even provided, involved, though they are, engaged. They are representing as a elected member, but they are not involved in the decision-making process. So normative frameworks are there in place, but they are not, involved into the whole process because of the caste issues. So we can even look at different areas. For example, in politics, there is as I said earlier, representation is there, but when you look at their representation, it is made rarely tokenistic, which even garnered some time frustration among Dalit women, particularly when we have some conversation with them. In the employment sector, also there is a reservation in public sector employment, but Dalit women have a very low representation in comparison to the Dalit male. And in the informal sector, they are often confined to low-paying jobs, some insecure jobs, or some exploitative jobs, right? Even if they are qualified, they are frequently overlooked for better opportunities because of their caste, because of the stigma attached to their caste. They also experience discrimination at the workplace. They face triple discrimination: the caste, gender, and class. So at the rural setting, when you go to the rural setting, they are also experiencing discrimination, or they are barred from using water resources, or face humiliation in different social gatherings. So these are some of the normative frameworks we have available in principle, and at the same time, there are gaps in the implementation.
Thank you, Mr. Roop. I think very similar experience also from the other countries that we were just hearing from other panelists, that the enforcement and the implementation of these legalities or normative frameworks are not very efficient anymore. I know I'm seeing some questions also in the chat box. We will come to the Q&A session towards the end for sure, and we will have time for all of you to ask questions. I would now like to go again back to Jyoti on exploring certain other challenges, and how do you see some other intersectionalities playing a role in the challenges that the survivors of trafficking and sexual violence face in terms of recovery and rehabilitation, for example, in terms of caste and class inequality, that would be influencing this kind of access to justice for survivors?
Yeah. So there are two elements, and I would just address them quickly. One is when survivors are rescued from an exploitative situation, whether it's a family situation or trafficking or sexual exploitation. In India, particularly, they are largely sent to an institutional care, which are protection homes. And the protection homes are supposed to be offering care and protection because victims are also the witnesses in their own cases and they need protection. Unfortunately, most shelter homes do not have a capacity to offer individualized rehabilitation or care. uh, the one size fit all solutions doesn't work in rehabilitation and recovery, because survivors, they come from different circumstances, they come from different states, they have a different level of trauma, and they also need a different level of intervention. So that is where we feel that the rehabilitation and recovery really slows down. Most of the survivors, when they get out of the family, they are left they do not even have their basic documentation in place. They do not have their documents, they do not have their identity, and that also affects their possibility of getting further educated, or even applying for jobs or learning something that will help them make career. And this actually makes them go back to the same exploitative situation, and that is what our experience has been. So recovery and rehabilitation is difficult. There are victim compensation scheme, there are free legal aid services, uh, there are short stay home, but navigating these facilities is very very difficult. One, there is lack of awareness, and navigating the services and accessing the services is not easy. And currently the civil society organization like ours are doing that role, but we are only able to do it for few hundreds, and there are thousands and lakhs of women currently facing the violence. So recovery and rehabilitation, the challenges we see are that they are not being able to go back to the life which is safe, which has a dignity. And that is where the challenge we face when it comes to recovery and rehabilitation. Where we talk about caste and class inequalities, again it really influences how the sexual violence impact get aggravated. In the recent past, we have seen in India, in a northeast part of the country, where uh, there is a tension between two groups, and the rape was used as a weapon of war, just to show the people of the other community, which are the tribals from a low uh, caste community, basically to put these communities in their place. So, there are issues like this. There are socio-cultural practices in MP, Rajasthan, and Chhattisgarh state of our country, where women, and it's a tribal practice, but there are women are traditionally pushed into prostitution. When, as a child, as a girl child of the family is pushed into prostitution. Now, these women or these girls, they find it very difficult to convince their own community to get out of. So there are groups of girls and groups of women who are trying to counter this traditional practice, but their own community is not, allowing it. And the larger community of a so-called high caste and high class people, they also feel that this community should not leave their traditional practice, because they are ultimately benefiting out of it. So caste and class, and even the minority communities are disproportionately gets affected when it's a gender based violence in India. Uh, and the intersectionalities that you mentioned in the beginning, it is very very important that it is understood in that fashion. So even within the victims who are approaching police station, uh, the same system or same processes is something that we are advising the communities or the police, the law enforcement, that you have to understand their issues or their conditions more holistically, and not just take things. So if there are atrocity act applicable, if the victim is from a low caste, and she was exploited because of the caste, we even make police apply the atrocity act section. And we try and help police to ensure that they register FIR comprehensively. But it is not that easy, and it is not, most victims are not able to do it on their own, and they require support of the civil society organizations, or like-minded people as of now.
Thank you, Jyoti. I think you paint out a very important aspect where you say that civil society organizations are able to support certain survivors in, uh, connecting them to these services from A to Z. But then it's not a lot, because you might be able to cater to a few numbers, few hundreds, but there are much more that are not being catered to right now. Um, Fareen, I would like to come to you to also understand in Bangladesh, where you were sharing that some of the factors that are creating these vulnerabilities towards more perpetrators, towards sexual violence for children. Some of the reasons are poverty, lack of education, and weak law enforcement as well, which are in the enforcement of it, which is contributing to it. Would you still be able to shed some light on certain safe spaces that are there, if there are shelters that are there, and what other alternate ways there are for survivors to access certain kind of support?
Thank you for asking this question, but because I feel it's very important to discuss this, and this is the right time to discuss about it. The question that you asked about the safe space, with a very, regretful heart, I have to say that there is not that much of a space for a victim or victim's family or even the eyewitnesses to go and ask for a shelter. So the safe shelter service is very limited in Bangladesh. Even if there are, it's not properly addressed, or there is a lack of awareness of people to know about these shelters as well. So that's the reason, like, most of the people don't know what should they do, where to go, and how to act and react on these issues. Now if I and the factors, the poverty, lack of education, weak of law enforcement, everything is actually indicating together, it's interconnected. So where there is poverty, people actually do not emphasize more on having this kind of information, because they are more into survival things. They want to survive in each and every day. So this kind of information, sometimes they don't acknowledge it, or they don't feel the need of knowing this kinds of information. Because in our education system, there is, I will say, a loophole where the girls themselves, they don't know the right of being a girl or being a human being, which is very important. I think being a citizen in South Asian country, I feel that from the very beginning of a childhood, people should know their rights. What is their right? What is their basic right, and how to act upon on it? So this is one thing. And poverty is actually one of the big reason. If we look into the statistic in 2020 during the pandemic, the rate of child abuse was the highest. It's recorded till now 1018 cases. So these actually reported cases. We don't know about how many unreported cases are there. Till now in 2025, as I mentioned before, 52 rape cases already has been reported, among which there are several cases where girls were being murdered after rape. And this is something that has been highlighting nowadays a lot in every kind of discussion and topics. So poverty, lack of education, and weak law enforcement, because of there is no specific way to address these issues immediately. There is a chance that it might not be getting enough attention. For an example, in previous years, there was this timeline of 180 days for a rape case to address and to dismiss it in the court. But nowadays, it's being talking about that the days needs to be reduced from 180 days, how to reduce it to 90 days or even less, how to put it in a very express way, so that whenever this kind of cases are coming, people need to address this thing first, or this case needs to be resolved first, and then the other things. Also in terms of collecting evidence, as Irfanji was mentioning, collecting evidence is one of the challenge and barrier, because if even if the police is willing to go for collecting evidence and something, because of victims being feeling unprotected, they are not always that much open to share different kind of evidence they can share, the different kind of information that's important for a case. So a special branch that specifically address and identify this kind of cases, handles this kind of cases, is actually missing into the system, because there is no special training. As I mentioned in the beginning, there is no special training, there is no expert people over here, there is a lack of sensitization, sensitivity, and also what I will mention is here, lack of proper social awareness. Even being not even in the low social class, even if you go to the high social class, ask anyone, I think there are very limited people. They know about what to do, how to do, and how to address, how to react, where to go and how to talk about it, how to make other people aware about it. Even if you're seeing it within your friends and family, that there is a possibility that this person can be harmful for anyone, how to address this, how to contact with that person, confront that person, communicate with that person. Because it's not about only educating a child or the family, it's also educating the society itself. We talk about women empowerment, but in the process of women empowerment, most of the time we actually miss that whom to empower with women also. We also need to empower men in terms of knowledge, in terms of giving them enough space so that they can also be able to help women, deal with their ego and come out from that barrier as well. So these are the issues that is most important, mostly needed to be recognized and also act upon it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Farin. Completely agree that these need to be now acted upon after us continuously understanding what the issue and problem is, but now we need to work towards the solution also of the problem. Um, Irfan, if I may come back to you on how you said that honor killings are are very often justified under the pretext of protecting family honor, which is also very similar practice where we see in northern parts of India as well and some southern part as well. How do you think, in the context of Pakistan, that it can be challenged and this deep-rooted patriarchal norms can be dismantled going forward?
Yeah, so the justification of honor killings as a means of protecting family dignity is a product of deeply ingrained patriarchal norms that view women as property and uphold male control over their lives. Challenging these norms requires a shift in societal attitudes through education, community engagement, and stronger legal accountability. One of the most effective ways to dismantle these patriarchal beliefs is through education and awareness that promotes gender equality and human rights. In schools, students must be integrated like comprehensive gender education into their curriculum, teaching young boys and girls that honor is not tied to a woman's body or choices, but rather to dignity, respect, and equality. Engaging religious and community leaders is also crucial as they play a very powerful role in shaping societal attitudes. Many perpetrators of honor killings wrongly justify their actions through religious misinterpretations, despite the fact that no major religion condones such violence. If religious scholars publicly condemn honor killing as an un-Islamic, it could significantly challenge the cultural narrative that justifies these murders. Another important strategy is ensuring stronger protection for witnesses and survivors. Women who survive honor crimes or violence related to honor often have nowhere to go, facing further threats and ostracization from their communities. The government must invest in safe shelters, economic opportunities, and psychological supports for survivors, allowing them to rebuild their lives rather than being forced back into abusive environments. Um, in this digital age, I believe social media and mass media campaigns can also be leveraged to challenge honor based violence, documenting survivor stories, exposing judicial failures, and mobilizing public outrage can create a cultural shift where honor killings are no longer tolerated. Dismantling patriarchal norms will require like legal, social, and cultural change working in a tandem. Laws must hold perpetrators accountable, and communities must reject honor-based violence, and women must be empowered to live free and from the fear of persecution.
Thank you so much, Mr. Irfan. I think one very important point you are bringing is the mobilizing of the public in itself and educating of these religious leaders as well and the community leaders themselves. And I think a very important idea is also the gender education, bringing gender into the education of our everyday schooling. Um, Roop, I would like to come to you on how, if you could also reflect and share a bit more on different forms in which the social exclusion towards Dalit women manifest itself in their communities, including in educational space, employment, and public spaces. And what do you think of it as from a legal framework too?
Thank you. Thank you, Sataksi, for your questions. Let me start with the one claim that we make in the international forums. Yeah, in the international forums, Nepal is considered as a role model for gender equality and women empowerment. But if we look at our immediate past history, most of the women rights have been ensured through code, which is understandable. But these achievements have to be looked at from the intersectionality lens. Despite this claim, Dalit and other marginalized women, continue to face structural and systemic discrimination at the societal level, or many other cultural circumstances. For example, if you look at the gender-based violence, or other forms of discrimination, the data shows that Dalit women experience higher rates of gender-based violence, both at the family and the society, which includes rape and domestic abuse, and including the trafficking, right? And you can also see the high impunity for crime against Dalit women. The several data produced by Nepal police and other law enforcement agencies are the true testament of this. And one more emerging, discrimination that is one more, emerging issues of Dalit women, not only Dalit women, Dalit male as well, Dalit community in general. After the emergence of social media, it has provided a level playing field to amplify our voices. But at the same time, the perpetrators, use it as a tool for discrimination. You might have also observed that the discrimination has largely shifted to digital space, where people use it for dehumanizing public rhetoric and derogatory remarks against Dalit community, particularly Dalit women. So, at the societal level, despite several political regimes change over within the certain amount of time, we still observe many discriminations at the societal level. And I could see the role of political parties who fail to promote inclusivity within their political party structure, and its manifestation at the different societal level. As you have rightly pointed out, if we look at the education data, Dalit girls, I also briefly mentioned this a little earlier, like they face higher dropouts. Several factors are there because of poverty, because of the social stigma, and lack of support system, either by the family or the society. There is a high dropout rates, both at the school level and as they go, upward mobility. And then the discriminatory practices are also exist in the school structures by their teachers or by their classmates. You could see a severe denial of participation in some cultural and other social activities sometimes. So therefore, there is an urgent need of requirement for legal reforms, or the implementation of existing normative frameworks, and at the same time, the community-based intervention by the political actors, as well as the allies, to ensure Dalit women's full participation in the society, so that they can live their life with respect and dignity.
Thank you, Rupa. I think a very important, something that you're shedding light on is how the marginalization and discrimination is also now manifesting itself in the digital spaces. It's not just in physical spaces anymore, and we are also seeing similar patterns of marginalization in online spaces as well. That's something I think going forward is also everything the society needs to think of while working on gender-based violence. I think now that we're coming towards a bit of end part of the discussion, I would like to go to each of you for also solutions and way forward, because I think it's important to talk about that. All of us being in civil society space, I think we're talking solutions on a daily basis. So I will go to you, Jyoti, first on what concrete steps do you think should be taken both at a national level in India and also in the international level to strengthen the justice mechanisms, the survivor support systems, and the law enforcement accountability that you were mentioning in cases of violence against women.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if there can be a short answer to this, but just in the interest of time, I feel that one is addressing gender-based violence against women. The intervention should not only target women. We have to adopt a life cycle approach to this, where at all ages this needs to be included in the school curriculum, in education setup. There has to be efforts to increase women's workforce participation, and this will act more at a prevention level, where there will be a strong resilience. At a national level, if I have to talk about the legal frameworks, I think strengthening legal frameworks further is required to accommodate new age challenges. We have now cyber crimes and use of technology to continue exploiting women, or increasing violence against women. So there has to be a legal framework that now accommodate these newer challenges. We have to look at the fast tracking trials. We are seeing that even in the cases of sexual exploitation of children, the duration of trial is somewhere between 3 to 5 years, and with sexual exploitation of women it is even longer. So it takes an average of 5 to 8 years when it comes to sexual exploitation of women, and I think we really need some work there, having more judges recruited, more courts created, or dedicating courts, or having a special courts. So in entire country we just have one special court to address cases of trafficking, and that is in Mumbai. And we need more courts and more support from the system here. We also need to look at appropriate sentencing. I think the fact that violence is not reducing, it is because the law is not able to work as a deterrent. So the appropriate sentencing is something that needs to be looked at. Or the liberal grant of bail is also something that needs to be rechecked. For the comprehensive survivor support, I feel that shelters, they are required, they are much required, but they should be open and accessible, which is currently not the case, which does not give confidence to a woman who is undergoing a violence to step out of the family or exploitative situation and keep her at a safe place. There are victim assistance program, and I think there has to be they need to be more comprehensive, and there has to be a one window system where they're able to actually get the financial, psychological, social support for her rehabilitation. um, we have spoken a lot about the accountability of law enforcement and judiciary. I think what it needs is allocation of budget for safety of women. So whatever plan there may be, if they're not supported through funds, I think so I think there needs to be a more allocation to women's safety in the budget. At the international level, India is a ratified has ratified to several conventions and treaties, but we feel that there is still scope to ensure that domestic laws actually align with the ratification and the convention that we have ratified to. There are a lot of cross-border issues like trafficking, and India needs to really have an inter-country dialogue for efficient rehabilitation, repatriation, or receiving survivors. And we only have it with Bangladesh, but apart from that, India receives victims of trafficking from over 12 to 13 countries every year, and we do not have this kind of arrangement with any other country. We should have more platforms, to sharing best practices like this, where we are able to learn, from other countries. And last but not the least, I think international funding or investment in gender-based violence is also need to improve, and it should not see only working with the survivors, but lot of work that needs to happen at the prevention level. um, I would also want to, just bring one element here, which is not related to law enforcement, but the role of media is something. The Bollywood movies are enjoyed globally, but what it is doing to Indian women, they are creating, a definition of ideal women. They have normalized violence. They have created a definition of manliness or masculinity that people are losing sense of right and wrong, and there's nobody to watch this, and the law enforcement can very well take action. They can, but nobody's looking at media how they are portraying it, and anything women does different than the quote unquote definition of ideal women, it is becoming a reason for violence. So I think at India and the international level, these are some of the things I would like to suggest.
Thank you, Jyoti. And I think to this end, gender sensitization towards the community in a preventive manner in itself can solve certain representations of women, as you said, because ultimately the filmmakers are also rooted in the patriarchal system that they come from. So completely agree. Quickly, I think I would go to Fareen. Fareen, you shared some of the policy reforms and interventions that are urgently needed in the new Bangladesh just in the past session. But what do you think could be the role that the international community play in supporting this effort?
Um, when we talk about international support, it's also aligned with international fundings as well as people engage with it. So with the international stakeholders, we can actually work on some technical and financial support as well, because technical guidance is very much needed. If we look into the law enforcement system, training, some expertise within the law enforcement system. If we look into the policy makers board, then the people who are coming up with the policies, these people also need to have some kind of gender sensitive education. If we talk about one of the prime area, that is the education. So in the education system, who are engaged? First of all, the teachers are engaged, right? But if we look into the system of Bangladesh education system, the teachers training program, it's very good. It's a very good program, very comprehensive, intensive program. But I think that the missing element is the gender education over here and the sensitization of it as well, because most of the cases are also coming nowadays that the child is being abused by the teacher, and because it's a teacher, they are being instructed that you need to follow your teacher's instruction. So most of the children, when they receive that, they are being abused, they are being facing violences, but at the same time, because teachers say not to say it to anyone, they are not saying. And the alarming incidents are coming out just the few days ago after the 8-year-old child died. So now people are coming up with incidents. The childrens are coming up with incidents. The what their teachers are doing with them. So this is getting now in a very alarming rate. Another thing that we all need to address is that we do have specific time of the year, 16 days of activism. That is one of the prime time where we can actually bring up these kinds of awareness programs, educational things, events. Basically, 16 days of activism, it's practiced only within the NGO or the development sector, but it's not targeting only the NGO development sector. It needs to be acted widely, in the schools, in the colleges, even in the organizations as well. So this is one of the very important area. Another thing is that, as I mentioned, that there is no safe space, like mention safe space. So it's immediately required to create some safe spaces, not only for the victims, but also sometimes for the witnesses as well, sometimes from the family members as well, who are coming from the very vulnerable family. Another issue is that there is a need to connect people in a very swift and a very prompt way. So one of that can be, creating some online mechanism where, keeping your identity hidden, you can also report it. So the victim is open to, go online and then report it, because nowadays many children are using cell phones. They do have access to their cell phones. So it's needed to be there so that they feel comfortable, even if they are not willing to share it with their parents. At least they have a safe space where they can share, they can receive support, mental support, they can receive some other supports from schools or from nearby health agencies or NGOs, something like that. Another important is that which is very important, that needs to be done in the new Bangladesh reform system, is that mandatory reporting and also strengthening the protection system. So the protection system, again, it's worked within the development sector, but the development sector does not work with the whole society, right? In every social class level, there needs to be some kinds of mechanism, and it has to be unanimous, so that everyone is aware about the protection mechanism system. Everyone is educated enough to know what to do and what not to do. And also within the law enforcement system, a different department can be created. There is a department where gender-based violence are being reported, and this like very swift actions are being taken. But between the child and the woman, the thing is that women's problems are being addressed mostly rather than the child problem, because there is no such kind of environment placed where children can feel safe and they can come and they can talk, so these are some of the important things that through international community, Bangladesh can receive some guidance, some steps can be taken. Also in terms of policy intervention, as Jyotiji was mentioning, that it's interconnected thing, right? So maybe within South Asia, we need to talk a bit, create a platform where we can come together and talk about it. Because yes, there are incidents happening in Bangladesh and the perpetrator is flying out to India or nearby countries, So it has to be a regional discussion thing where we can come up with a common legal system, keeping all the domestic laws in the line as well. And another important thing is that Jyotiji was mentioning about the media. Yes, media plays a very important role. It's not only about movies. It's also about the Netflix series that's coming up. The online series that's coming up, because most of the series are now targeting how you can get easily drug access to drugs, how you can easily get yourself exposed and everything else. So it's very important to address these kinds of channels, and also through the channels, how we can actually share the proper guidelines to the young generation, to the people who are not that much vocal to share their problems, share their issues. It can be one of a prime channel. Thank you.
Thank you, Fareen. I agree. And I think I would also suggest that on this same line, that if we were to also work on gender sensitization from a ground level, even if we have content, let's say on Netflix, which definitely should have proper guidelines, I think that sensitization itself will allow these young children or young women to make informed decisions when consuming media, which also could be the other side of what we can see here. Irfan and Roop, I think similar questions to you also. What kind of commitments would you like to see from the CSW 69? We are also talking about the Beijing platform action and its implementation. What are your views in both of your experiences that you would expect something that would come out from this? I think we can go to Irfan first.
Yeah, so the UN and its specialized agencies must take a more proactive stance in ensuring that countries like Pakistan comply with international human rights treaties and conventions, particularly the CEDAW. Pakistan is a signatory to CEDAW, but has failed to fully implement its provisions in addressing gender-based violence. UN bodies must push for greater accountability mechanisms, ensuring that states provide periodic reports on their progress in eradicating honor crimes, and closing legal loopholes that allow perpetrators to escape punishment. One of the most critical role the international community can play is in monitoring and documenting cases of honor crimes and pushing for greater transparency in legal proceedings. Many cases of honor crimes go unreported due to family cover-ups, police inaction, and a lack of independent investigations. Donor agencies also must invest in civil society organizations and investigative journalism initiatives to document these cases, expose judicial failures, and amplify survivors' voices at a global level. Uh, I must say, like through like CSW events, I would like to see a strong collective commitment from government, UN bodies, and donors to address honor crimes as a global human rights crisis rather than a domestic cultural issue. Platforms such as the CSW must call for stronger enforcement of laws, increased protection for survivors, and a complete ban on forgiveness provisions in honor killing cases. Furthermore, governments must be held accountable through periodic international reviews, ensuring they make measurable steps towards eradicating honor killings rather than simply passing laws that remain unenforced. The fight for honor crimes is not just about legal reforms, it is about changing the mindsets, empowering survivors, and ensuring that no woman is killed in the name of honor without consequences. The time of action is now, and CSW must serve as a turning point in the global fight against gender based violence.
Thank you so much, Irfan, for putting you're shedding light on such an important issue on one of the gender-based violence in the global. I think, would you also like to share some of the legal and policy levels steps that can be taken to empower Dalit women in Nepal, and also internationally, what can be done about it?
Mm. Uh, yes, of course. I mean, there is general perception that caste-based discrimination is only affecting Dalit, which is not true. It is not only affecting Dalit, but it's also holding the entire country back. And as soon as the state and its drivers realize this one, we'll be able to address this is much better fashion. So, same holds true for Dalit women as well. The government therefore must put their issues in priority and work urgently to mainstream their issues, to the broader social, societal landscape. I have a couple of observations or suggestions at a different level. For example, at the community level, we must change people's mindset because we still have a casteist mindset which relegate people at the bottom of the at the bottom of the social hierarchy. Therefore, a massive awareness campaign is required, which need to be started right from the elementary schools and from the community levels, because schools can play an important role, and where we should create a space where Dalit girls feel safe and supported. Another thing, the media can also play a big role to bring their issues to the forefront and break the stereotypes on different layers of harmful practices. Therefore, we must create spaces where the lead women can come together, share their stories, and at the same time, support to each other. That's at the community level. And at the legal level, I think we need to make sure that the laws against discrimination should be strictly enforced. For example, we have the caste-based discrimination and untouchability act, which must be implemented with immediate and quick action to those who are involved in the caste-based discriminations. So there could be certain special mechanism. For example, there could be a separate bench to look at the caste cases. There could be a fast track system within the formal court procedures, and at the same time, there should be a kind of inclusivity within the within the law enforcement agencies. I think this can enhance their access to justice. If I have to give you the numbers, in the history of 75 years history of Nepal, we have never seen a judge from Dalit community in the Supreme Court. And now we have three types of court, but we have only 6 judges from Dalit community, both in the district and high court. And you can imagine we have less than 1% lawyer from Dalit community out of 20,000 registered lawyers in this country. Therefore, inclusivity is very important. And at the same time, the law enforcement agencies must be trained to handle caste and gender-based violence. And one more thing, impunity is increasing at an alarming rate, especially in the case of Dalit women. I can give you numbers of example. For example, in 2020, a Dalit girl, Angira Pasi, she was raped and murdered, and her family had to fight a lot for justice. And recently, in the past 1 week, there is one. There was one Dalit girl. Her name is Rinku Kumari Sada. She was barely a 17 years old Dalit girl, and she had also go through the same fate. She was raped and then murdered. But the surprising thing is that the perpetrator should be taken to the justice system, but the state itself is protecting the perpetrator sometimes, which might sound very quite surprising to you. there's a high degree of impunity, and the state is involved to protect perpetrators, which really is not a good sign in our context. And as far as your question regarding the international human rights mechanism is concerned, of course, during this 69th session of the CSW, or Beijing Plus 30, we have received numbers of concluding observations, but unfortunately, the government is quick to make commitment in the national forums, but when it comes to implement them in the national context, there is always a problem. There is always a gap. So. And then if I have to jump into the policy level, we need to make sure that Dalit women have a fair representation and economic opportunities. For that, maybe we need to amend our existing electoral system so that they can have their fair representation at the federal, at the province, and at the local level. And for that also to happen, the political parties should play a crucial role to support the lead women to take leadership roles, and then and at the same time the government should come up with the economic support system so that they can live a dignified life and independent life. Probably that can be accommodated into our different social social protection system. So this is what I think the government or the whole state can support Dalit women by reforming laws, by establishing the support system, and making them financially or economically independent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roop. And I think I would like to thank all of the panelists for really giving us insights into all of the situation that's happening on the ground, and what would be, according to your own expertise and the fact that you work on the ground, what would be the certain solutions and ways forward for agencies to work on, even international, national, or local level. I think I would like to quickly go to the questions because we might have much time left. I think there are two questions that are addressed to Aditi. Aditi, if you are here, I think I would address those both of your questions first to you, and then we can move on. One of the questions is with the rise of digital threats, child exploitation, and online grooming, what measures should be taken to strengthen online protection for girls and prevent child trafficking and abuse?
Thank you for that question. It's a very important question, but I must mention that a lot of the solutions that we discussed actually apply across these various social legal issues. The way I would like to answer this question is the fact that these are very complex issues and need multi-sectoral approach, and not just from the point of view of protections, but also from the point of view of prevention in the very first place. So from a prevention perspective, what we really need to do is enhance our digital literacy and education. This could happen at school levels by integrating online safety into curriculums, parental education, sort of to ensure that they foster healthy habits, but also have an open space for children. Now, from a protection perspective, I think Irfanji mentioned that we are a very over legislated region, but what about enforcement? The laws and the legal frameworks really need to address these very dynamically changing uh, uh, perspectives, and like online threats and like online grooming happens to be one of them. We need to think about tougher penalties, but also sort of more accountability for online platforms and technological platforms. There should be mandatory reporting for online platforms within and like envisaged within the law, which requires them to report suspected cases of child abuse. Online policies, the platform policies, flagging systems, controls should be much higher, while at the same time taking care that what is happening is we are creating legislations, but they do not have the intended effect, but actually have the use of infringing on privacy. We need to have it built in within the law to understand the purpose and objectives of the law. Furthermore, I think community engagement and support is important. We need to have hotlines, counseling services, awareness campaigns, as we spoke about. Online grooming, child trafficking, and exploitation is more often than not an international issue. We need to have global, bilateral, multilateral agreements. We need to have stronger data and information sharing practices within countries. And towards the end of it all, we really need to have a victim centric or a survivor centric approach, not just for like an informed, integrated care, but also for sort of rehabilitation, because these are measures that are essential to address again the various intersecting marginalizations. Children, and children from marginalized and poor backgrounds. So there are various levels of risk that exist. And in order to sort of create safer digital spaces for our people, and to make it harder for perpetrators to exploit vulnerable individuals, we need to address these issues from really a multi-sectoral, multifaceted approach. And I would really invite any of our experts on the panel to chip in, because these are like, what should be done is one thing, but what actually happens is something that they work on an everyday basis. And the should and the can is a completely different ball game. So I hope I've answered that question from my perspective. uh, I think again on the question of gender-based violence, Jyoti ji, Farheen ji, as well as Irfan ji and Roop ji, all of them have together spoken about a lot of legal framework and strengthening legal framework, fast tracking, fast tracking certain issues, witness protection. Uh, I think what is also important is access to comprehensive health services and integrated care models, which not just take care of like physical and mental health, but also legal services for victims. Uh, Somebody also mentioned public awareness and community education, which is vital in these cases. Restorative practices for victims, support for children who are facing gender based violence, like a lot of our experts mentioned investments in care and shelter homes. I also mentioned like we don't have enough protection mechanisms. We need that for gender based violence. And none of these issues can be handled individually. So while governments and civil society can make efforts, these efforts also need to happen at a community level. So I think it's a very integrated approach, particularly on the issue of GBV. A lot of our experts have already mentioned solutions, and I would not repeat them, but I would I would really uh, I would really want to insist that what should be done and what actually happens are different things, and this gap is what we need to work towards mitigating. I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aditi. I think you addressed almost the levels of all the questions that they are being asked here, and the important aspects of it. I think one important question I also see that I would like to pose to almost every one of you on the panel are also, we were talking about best practices, and in the scope of these best practices of capacity building, because almost every panelist said how there needs to be some kind of training, sensitization, and awareness building programs towards schools and different legal frameworks and structures as well. The question is about how about the best practices that even Roop you were mentioning that are being implemented at school, how to have a best impact, how do we have manuals? I guess there are, but in practice on the ground what is happening? Okay, so I think if one of you can reflect on maybe in your own work, if you've used certain practices or manuals when it comes to building these capacity building programs, and how it actually manifests in practice.
Uh, should I go ahead?
Yes, of course. Please go on.
Thank you so much. I mean, uh, there is a low level of awareness on caste discrimination at the societal level. If we look at the school level curriculum, there are so many narratives that put Dalits at the low rung of the society, that dehumanize them. There are so many symbols. There are so many narratives. There are so many historical perspective put into the curriculum or in our textbook that actually does not recognize the contribution that Dalits have played into the making of the civilizations. For example, I and one of my colleagues undertook one study on how the caste system is being taught at the master's level at one of our, university, Tribhuvan University. We were so surprised to look at those findings. Uh, they have there are so many texts prescribed, so many textbook prescribed, which give you informations and knowledge how caste system was originated, how it was evolved over the time. But we are so surprised to see that not even a single lived experiences of Dalits were put into that textbooks. So you can imagine how what kinds of graduates are coming from there, whether they are working to end caste discrimination, whether they go to the society or reinforce that discrimination within their space or beyond their space, right? So we need to we need to really look at the structure, that who makes the curriculum, whether the people from the marginalized groups are involved in making those curriculums, whether their histories are properly reflected in the overall textbooks, or any materials that are being provided to the students, be it at the elementary level or at the university level. So we really need to revisit the kind of curriculum we are making, because we need to be culturally sensitive to the unique needs, because every student is uniquely different, and we need to really appreciate, we need to really respect, and we need to really facilitate those unique needs to promote the learning of those students. So I think we need to really revamp the whole education system, and then start having a kind of discussion among the stakeholders, that how we can promote actually inclusivity, social justice, and human rights within the broader framework of the school curricula. Thank you.
Thank you, Rup. I completely agree that it needs to be done more on a systemic level rather than just uh, from smaller point of views, where we are addressing certain best practices, but not at a larger level. I'm not sure if anyone else would like to share if you have an example of a practice that is being taken already within the system, is being adapted to the educational system. I'm not very optimistic about it, but if anyone has an example, I would give you time for that to share also. Fareen, Jyoti ma'am, or someone. Jyoti, yes, please go ahead.
Here, particularly in India and in the state of Maharashtra, what we are doing is we are actually doing sessions in school, colleges, and childcare institution on gender and understanding gender role. The challenges that children face these days are also, quite complex. And we do these sessions together. We have created tools for children, which is very interactive and gameplay based, so that the message is retained. There are sessions that happen at the school and the community level. There are children's group that we form as panchayats at the community level, and they are the ones who are keeping, once they are changing their own behavior, they are also contributing to the family responsibility, irrespective of whether they are considered feminine or masculine. At the same time, they are also trying to keep a tab on child protection issues at the village level. So whether it is a child marriage, or somebody's education has stopped, or somebody has gone to other villages and not come back, so they are the ones because we see a lot of potential in adolescents and youth to be a change agent, and that has worked. We also make them visit police station, collector's office, or municipal corporation office, just to get an understanding and sense of rights, that these are the people, they are there to help you, and trying to ease the situation. We are also taking we are empowering police officials to come to childcare institutions and see what the children that they have rescued are doing. And many times we have seen that police feels that they don't know what happens to people they rescue. So because there is no that kind of a closure, it doesn't motivate, the work doesn't motivate them working with victims of gender based violence, because they don't know what happens to them. So we have tried to do that, and we've seen increased sensitivity among police, among children, among communities. We have seen better engagement and interaction. We've even did a study in the state to understand how friendly child police and child police stations are. And we largely took there were 500 plus children participated in the study, because we understood it from the children's we try to hear children's voices. So even though children wanted to be a police, but the reason for becoming a police was different, and we communicated that to police officials, and they were also very shocked to know why children want to be police. There is an element of power, corruption, do whatever you want to do, you can scream at anyone, you can hit anyone. So it was a very very good engagement. It was very reflective, but these are the things that we can do at a local level, especially countries like India, which has a demographic dividend. And if we don't do some good work with them, we don't know where it is, where it will be a dividend. With India, I also feel that we should look at the women's participation in politics and in the parliament, because I think India is one of the country where the women's participation in lower house is, I think, 15%, and in the upper house is just 13%, and these are one of the lowest in South Asian countries. And if then it will not become, even in the village politics, when the woman becomes sarpanch, the women's issues take center stage. And at a national level, it is also true at the national level. If their women's participation doesn't increase, then women's issue might not take a center stage as it should have. So these are my submissions to the question.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. I think these examples are very contextual and important to understand. Fareen, I saw your hand raised. Do you want to add something?
Yes, I just want to share one of the experience while I was working in the refugee camp back in Cox's Bazar. So we worked with the refugee community as well as the host community, because both were residing side by side. So we cannot ignore the host community as well. But the program that we used to run, it was different. For the refugee community is a different, the materials are different, the process, the procedures are different, but the host community is different, because of the host community already have some established system, whereas the refugee community don't. But when we were talking about the education for the refugee child, the gender sensitization was included. The children in the camp, they actually know the things about good touch and bad touch. They knows about the rights, being a refugee in a country, what they can do, what they cannot do. There was a fear of facing police and the law enforcement inside the camps, and to rebuild a trust between the law enforcement agencies and the refugees, there was initiative. There was police program, there was program for the militaries, there was coordination program. But when we look into the host community, it's only the particular host community we are sharing the same kind of elements, but not the educational ones, just with the law enforcement agencies. So there is established school system, there is educational procedures over there, but it's not including the gender sensitization program that we were including into the community of refugees. So this is a big gap between the international intervention and local national intervention. So I think it's very important when we are talking about this kind of intervention and how it can be useful to address these kinds of issues and also sensitization our community. It needs to be aligned, and the differences was so visible that at some point we used to think that why not we are implementing these kinds of procedure systems and mechanism in our general level as well. So it's very important as well, not only the international community to have an intervention, but also to, come and work on a unanimous system where you can also align it with the national system and policies as well.
Completely agree on the localization aspect. I think it needs to be contextualized, and even the experts from the local context need to be on the table of decision making or process making as well. Mr. Roop, I wanted to just check if we have more time, or do we take more questions, or should we go towards closing?
So, Taxi, I think we should conclude now.
Okay, okay. So I think thank you very much to all of the panelists, to Aditi, and to all of you, the participants who've invested 2 hours today to be with us and to listen to all of the experiences of the people who've been working on the ground on gender-based violence, and also specifically highlighting the intersectionalities of these gender-based violence that are taking place, and also shedding light from a very global, regional perspective. I think this is something we have not seen very much. We are seeing somewhere. I think in all of your conversations, we were able to build certain common threads, understand these commonalities from a regional perspective. And I think sometimes, as also Aditi was saying, certain solutions can be worked on from a larger level, and mobilizing the community together at a bigger level, rather than in coordination with also our contextual local levels. So a few things that I would just like to reflect on, just put it out there, that came a lot across all of the conversations, were how there is an imminent need to strengthen the enforcement of legal provisions and build back the trust of the public towards law reforms and legal structures. The importance need of prevention, the preventive lens, rather than the lens of working on once the violence has taken place. So uh, uh, and also very important aspect I think I heard from all of you is sensitization of the first responders to when they are dealing with these victims of gender-based violence across. And an important aspect also that have come towards the end is this gender sensitization, not in tokenistic way, but gender education becoming an integral part of your school curriculums and spaces, so that it is working towards the prevention rather than the cure. In terms of I think a good call that all of you have made, and I would like to re-emphasize on it towards the international community, is provision of sufficient resources and funding. It's urgently needed towards activities and work of gender-based violence, specifically that are on towards intersectionalities, and that target systemic and structural change on a multi-stakeholder level. I think what we've understood together today is we are all working on our own local levels, on our contextual levels, but it needs to be now done in a systemic and structural way, that the impact is actually seen, and you see the enforcement as a result rather than just tokenism. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope that all of you have gained a lot of insights. And if you would like to reach out to us later, I think that's also a possibility, Rupta, yes, for participants to see if they would like to further converse with us on this. But thank you, everyone, for connecting with us today and for your time. If anyone wants to add anything before we leave.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So much for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
It was nice hearing from everyone. Thank you.
Take care.